Awesome. All right, you've kind of started to master how to get over modeling, which is really powerful and super cool. What I wanted to do now is answer a question that I get a lot, and it's based into your budgeting plan that hopefully you've gone through and you set up, and you're in the habit of, at least by now, you should sort of be in the habit of applying your budget, which is awesome. And then I want to look at one of the most powerful concepts that you can really have with this, relating to this idea of underlying subconscious motivations and what the root of your intentions are and what the motivations are behind the actual money that you achieve, and that you grow and you grow and you grow once you start to go through this program more and you just multiply your money through the power of quality financial assets. And it all comes down to this concept, and Ecker starts off with it here, of saving for a rainy day. And he says, a lot of people are kind of focused on saving for a rainy day versus others that spend crazy and they think that this mindset of you could lose everything and you're only living for today and you should never really save for the future. And those are two very different mindsets, very different mentalities. And so for him, for Ecker, and I think it's a really great mentality that he focuses on, he says saving for a rainy day might sound like a good idea, but it can create big problems. And one of the principles that he sort of focuses on is that if you're saving your money for a rainy day, what are you gonna get, right? You're going to get rainy days. Because like we talked about earlier, what you put your attention on, what you put your focus on, will become a reality. If you have a fund, if you have a bank account, and in your bank, I know this happened with someone I worked with at Subway. They had a little subset of their bank account, and I've never had a flat tire, or I've gotten into a couple of crashes, a little bit minor crashes, totally my fault. They're not great, but I don't have a flat tire or anything like that. And I think the reason why is because I totally don't think that it's a possibility, and I ignore it. Now, I might be a stupid, I'm probably talking about it right now. I'm gonna go get, whatever, right? But I had this coworker, and they had a little bank account they set up, kind of like we talked about earlier with setting up multiple bank accounts so you can sort out your money. And the bank account was their flat tire fund. And out of the, thousands of people I know, this person who had a flat tire account, who had a bank account for flat tires, got more flat tires than anybody I know. They would literally miss I think they missed 7 days over the course of the year that I knew them, 8 months that I knew them. They missed work 7 times because they got a flat tire coming to work. And I'm pretty sure they weren't lying about it. And it would happen over and over and over again, because they would constantly allocate a certain percent of their income to their flat tire fund. And it became this self-fulfilling prophecy where they would constantly get flat tires because they were always focusing on flat tires. And Ecker kind of acknowledges this, and he says that you need to stop saving for rainy days and instead focus on saving, and this is a key difference, focus on saving for joyous days, right? Joyous, that's a really good J. Joyous days. Or for, the day that you win your financial freedom. And then by the virtue of the law of intention, right? This is really critical, the law of intention. If you have a bank account and it's labeled, this is the money I'm gonna spend on a divorce attorney. How do you think a marriage is gonna go? Right? Versus, this is the money that I'm gonna spend on our 50-year anniversary. They're totally separate paths, and all it comes down to is what is the intention that you have with the money that you have, that you generate, that you invest, that you get from your assets, because that intention will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Most people tend to be identical to their parents in the area of money, but it's also the flip side of the coin. So some of us end up being exactly the opposite of our parents because of anger or rebellion. And I think this is probably one of the reasons I started getting really hardcore into investing, is neither of my parents are really hardcore into it. Is because I wanted something that was mine. And in short, it kind of depends off of the tensions that exist in your life. But he kind of talks about it. Yeah, this is a tough concept, and it's a delicate concept. And the tough thing is it's kind of hard to talk about money management, especially as you're growing up. When you're a kid, right? And when you're learning about these concepts, you start to realize that the shifts come not early on, but instead once you go through stuff like this. You understand concepts like this, and you intentionally decide that you're gonna have better money management. You intentionally decide that you will be more, you will have more, you will achieve more. And that shift is tough because you have to make it yourself. And if you try to share that, especially like my parents, they don't have the best investments ever just because they don't understand sort of the concepts that you're gonna learn and that you have in 9 to noon. And if you try to share that with somebody or be like, hey, you need to make better investments and this is how you do it, usually you're gonna get a door slammed in the face. Usually you're not gonna be well received unless you have really, really, really phenomenal social skills, which is something I've been working on for a very, very long time. But it's tough, and so, because of that, if you flat out go up to someone and say that I'm never gonna be like you and I'm gonna be rich and whatever, that's kind of how I started probably 5 years ago. That was kind of how it was to my parents, and because of that, it was, at least with my mom, because it's kind of the only person I live with, it didn't work out very well. It was pretty bad at first. So I started to realize if you want to have a shift, if you want to have a change, you got to be a lot more delicate with it. And so now I've become a lot more delicate with it, and I've shared a lot of my overarching goals with at least my mom, my dad, and it's been a lot easier because you're not really forcing on them. You're just look, this is sort of the plan, the process, and the goals that I have. And if you've gone through the Think and Grow Rich Masterclass, you probably understand that at a much deeper level than I could kind of share with you in this brief moment. It's really, really critical, especially if you come from maybe a family that's not $100 million family, not $1 billion family. You understand that this motivation can be shared with others, and even if they don't have the motivation themselves, they don't have the root of their wealth in themselves, it's really critical that you don't feel like you're going against somebody. You don't feel like you're gonna go out and make a bunch of money to show people off or to show your parents that you can do it. That prove them wrong. This idea of proving people wrong, because that's not really the right way to sprout a lot of money. Especially if you have a lot of achievement, a lot of success, you have phenomenal investments, and you make tons of money trading or investing in assets or anything, right? If the root of that cash, if the root of that money is in anger, and you have money linked with anger, this money is going to subconsciously bring pain to you, because anger is one of the very, 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 very few negative emotions that can literally destroy your life. And if you link money to anger, even if it's not conscious, even if it's subconscious, your mind is going to desire to get rid of this anger, and the way it's going to do that is by saying, well, we got to get rid of this money. And you'll find a freaking way to lose it all. It happened to me pretty often. You get scammed. I got scammed at least pretty freaking hard. And what happened, I was making a lot of money trading actively 9 to noon, and then I was really, really crushing it when I was first getting investing with swing trading. And this was right sort of when crypto was starting to come up, and I started to invest in crypto because I was at school all day, so I couldn't really trade the market 9 to noon, but I could trade currency markets 24 hours a day, and it started to make a lot of money in currency markets, or cryptocurrency markets. And I had this portfolio. It was growing. But for me, I was still linking this money with anger, just because of seeing my parents constantly argue with money up until the point where they got divorced and my dad left. And so for me, I was linking all this money I was making to all these angry, negative emotions. And for me, I was okay, well, if I want to get rid of this anger, if I want to get rid of this negativity, what should I do? And the right thing to do, spoiler alert, is to actually confront the anger and actually confront the emotion and find a way to overcome it and find a way to get rid of it by talking it out with people around you, or by personally deciding mentally that you will not put any attention on that anger. You will strain it out like you would strain out, a wound. You will completely deprive it of any energy. I didn't understand that concept. I didn't understand that story of wrapping around a rubber band around your wounds so that you can stop the blood flow. I didn't understand that concept. And so for me, I thought about why I was being angrier and angrier and having a negative experience. And it came from this link that I had subconsciously that I wasn't even thinking about between money and all these negative experiences I had in the past with money with my parents. And so subconsciously, I made the decision that I had to get rid of all my money to get rid of all my anger. Now, spoiler alert, and Ecker talks about this, Like, that's not the strategy. That's not the way to get rid of anger. All you're gonna do is be broke and angry if you get rid of all your money. But the mind and the subconscious thinks that, oh, this money causes this anger and I must get rid of this money and I'll be happy. But in reality, you're not happy. You're just broke and angry. But I didn't understand that concept at the time. And so I remember I had these absolutely phenomenal investments in two of these cryptocurrencies called Verge and Stellar Lumens. I had about 60-70% of my overarching cryptocurrency portfolio in those two assets, and they were over the course of about a month and a half, Verge went up by a factor, I believe 35, and Stellar Lumens went up by a factor of about 48, and that's like 48x, not like a percent, like 38x, not a percent, and those positions were a couple grand. And combined with a couple of other positions in the same space and the same investment time frame, within about a month and a half, like on the table was $100,000, pretty easily $100,000, a little bit more than $100,000, like right there in my portfolio. Like I owned the investments. Like it wasn't like, oh, this is a paper account. Like no, that's like paper trading is stupid. You're gonna literally waste your time on money that's not even money. Like this was like assets. This was in my account. At the time, cryptocurrency was really booming. And as we start to get more into cryptocurrencies, so I'll talk to you guys a lot more about this concept of cryptocurrency mining. But basically, like there were these really big computers, and people would invest in these really big computers. And so you have kind of two options. The first option is like buy cryptocurrency and just like own the actual cryptocurrency or whatever it is. And you just wait for it to appreciate in value, hopefully, or it goes down. It's just like any other, stock investment, anything like that. Or you can, we'll kind of look more at this side. I have this whole like framework I'm really excited to kind of go through with you guys on investing. And we aren't really there yet, but just as a core foundational concept, basically you have this machine, you put money in it, and you build it, and then it mines cryptocurrency by running sort of the blockchain network, and it gives you a bunch of these coins in return, and then the coins are just the coins that go up and down in value. So you make this one-time investment right here, and then it just pays you out forever and ever for hopefully. And we can kind of get deeper into this concept later, but what's really important here is that these machines, especially when you're building your own machines, the most important piece of that machine is what's called a graphics card. Most of you guys probably know what a graphics card is. It's just like, it's this little, card about yay big inside of a computer, and it does like all the graphic processing, all the computational processing, the intense computations. And so these machines will have like 8, 10, 12 of these graphics cards, or you can just do it with 1 or 2 or 3. And they will just mine cryptocurrencies. And so you have this little card, and at the time, like, a mid-tier level one of these cards, it basically, you put up, a couple $100, and it makes this little piece of metal sitting in your computer will make about $6, $5, $4 a day, something around that range. Depends, obviously, and we'll get much more into that when we get to like actually cryptocurrency mining. But you build one of these machines and it's making like $40, $50 a day, and you invest a couple grand and it returns in the year or a couple of months. And a lot of people that ROI their machines in a couple of months, and then it's just like pure profit after that. It's just a phenomenal investing thing. And so because cryptocurrencies were getting really popular, and Bitcoin was going from like 2 grand to like 20 grand, and everyone was exploding, it was the coolest thing ever. Demand for these graphics cards, they just went like straight up. It was like it was insane. And this is actually when I was kind of first investing in Nvidia stock, and Nvidia stock, same thing. It just goes straight up. So obviously there's this huge demand. And what was happening in the marketplace is everyone was trying to buy this. Like there were literally people that had never built a computer before, and they were looking at this as an investment opportunity, and they were like, oh my gosh, I need to buy all these graphics cards. And so the prices similarly, since demand exploded, the prices went straight up. And what was interesting is at the same time that this is going on, the new iPhone had just come out. And because of that, there are only a couple of people on this planet, a couple of companies in the world that produce what's called DRAM, which is just like the RAM, it's the memory that computers run on. And it's the memory that the phones use, it's the memory that these graphics cards use. And what happened is the phone companies, Apple, Samsung specifically, have really strong contracts with the big memory providers, mostly with Micron. And they have contracts that say, look, we get the RAM, we get the memory first. And it doesn't matter who else you sell to, we want the memory first. We want it, they lock in their prices, their exchange rates, stuff like that. But the most important thing is that they get first dibs on this memory. And so they were producing tons and tons and tons of phones because demand for these phones was exploding. It was like all these new phones, there was a new screen, and it was like the new edgeless display, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And it is pretty awesome. So because of that, they were selling a ridiculous amount of these phones, and you know, Apple stock reflects it, right? Samsung reflects it. And as they were selling all these phones, they were sucking up like 85 to 90% of the capacity of the memory producers. And what happened is Nvidia and AMD to an extent, they also, AMD, Nvidia, they're probably the two big guys that produce these graphics cards, right? They would go to these suppliers and be like, we want to buy your stuff. Please let us buy your stuff. And they would be like, dude, we don't have that much stuff to sell you. We're running our factories 24/7. And like, we can only produce, you know, 10, 15% of what we usually produce for you. And so because of that, basically, for all intents and purposes, and from what I could tell, literally experiencing this firsthand, these companies were not making any more graphics cards because they were physically incapable of them due to supply chain limitations. And more specifically, a complete and total lack of memory availability. Because if you don't have, you know, if you're NVIDIA, if you're AMD, whatever, like, your production runs need to be pretty sizable to have economics of scale. And so if you can't get enough of one component, which would be memory, and you can't manufacture it yourself because it's freaking really specialized process, then you can't run a production run of cards if you don't physically have enough of it to make it reliable, make it feasible. If you don't have, you know, maybe say you need a production capacity of 1 million cards to be able to make it make sense to actually do a run and get all the factories going. Like, they didn't have that. And so they sold out of every single, like, their inventory was zero. They sold almost, like, pretty much everything they had was sold out. Everywhere it was sold out, sold out, sold out, sold out. And there was nobody whatsoever that actually had access to, you know, buy these new. And so because of that, in the secondary markets, and mostly on like stuff like eBay, the prices just went up and up and up and up and up and up and up because demand was exploding. And so basically the price of these graphics cards, in the matter of a couple of weeks, like, they doubled. I mean, like, something that used to cost like $500, it was $1,000. And if you could get these cards manufactured, you could literally sell them for ludicrous profit. I mean, it's insane, but they just weren't capable of doing that. And so in the secondary market, because, and I mean, these were selling like hotcakes. I mean, it was insane. There was a lot of volume, and it was at very, very high prices. And me at the time, like, my entire background was in financial markets. Everything I'd done was in investing. And that was my core, that was my focus, that was my passion, that was everything for me. And I made a decision. I was like, wow, look at this really great opportunity. You know, if I could just get these graphics cards in bulk and then sell them on secondary market, sell them on eBay, like, I would double my money. That's freaking sweet. I started contacting tons and tons of people in China, and like through Alibaba and stuff like that. Well, it was mostly Alibaba. I was like messaging people. And what I didn't know at the time was, you know, companies like Nvidia, multi-billion-dollar graphics cards manufacturing corporations. Like, they have a closed supply chain. They have a closed loop they have a closed manufacturing loop. Like, no, not anybody can just buy their cards. Like, not anybody can just make their cards. Like, it's proprietary. It's all their stuff, and they don't share that with random Chinese companies. And so what I'm pretty sure, looking back, is that everybody that like said that they had NVIDIA graphics cards was a scam. And you know, spoiler alert, like, it's a pretty bad scam. And I lost a lot of money through this. But what happened is I was contacting tons, probably like 20, 30, 40 of these like fake scam Chinese companies to like try to buy NVIDIA graphics cards, import them into the US, and then sell them. And I basically go through this process. I look at everybody's prices, and I find, you know, whoever's got the cheapest prices for bulk cards or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. You're awesome. You're the cheapest. I know that these cards are selling super quick. Can we get an order through? And so I'm like, okay, well, let me just do a test order because I don't want to, like, I didn't want to get scammed, right? And so I was thinking I'll put like a couple grand into this. And so I'm like, okay, well, why don't I just start out with, you know, a couple $100. And so I find the supplier, and I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, can I pay you, send me graphics cards? But why don't we just do a test shipment first? You know, I'll send you a couple $100 in Bitcoin. And because Bitcoin, like if you guys don't know, like, it's like a bajillion times easier to transfer money, especially overseas, with crypto than it is to do really anything even close to that with the traditional banking system. There's so many more fees in the traditional banking. Like, it just makes sense to use crypto. And so, and I didn't even have bank accounts at the time, like, because I was young, and anyway. So, I send this guy a couple $100 in crypto and Bitcoin, and he's like, okay, cool, shipped it out. You got it. And so I'm waiting. Like a week later, he sends me this message. And he says, oh my gosh, craziest thing ever happened. Our warehouse sent you out 10 times what you ordered. And so instead of getting like a couple of graphics cards, you're gonna get like 20 graphics cards. And I'm like, dude, holy crap. And I'm running the math. And I'm like, that's like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on this pallet ship that's coming to me. And they're like, yeah, it's really great. We just sent you everything, and you can pay us when it gets there, whatever. But it got to Mexico, and it's stuck in Mexican customs. I'm like, what do you mean it's stuck in Mexican customs? And they're like, well, since we sent more than we thought, it's a really, really big package, and they won't let it over unless we make a deposit or whatever. And I'm like, dude, how is that my problem? Fix it. And they're like, no, we can't get it to you unless you pay us more money. And I'm like, crap, all right? And I'm looking at this as an investment. I'm looking at this as an opportunity. And I'm like, okay, well, my upside here is like $30,000. And my downside here is, a couple grand. And I'm making this decision in my mind of like, what should I do here? And like, that's a pretty good upside. It's a lot of money. So I'm like, okay, fine. I send these guys, a couple grand or so. And I pay it to them in Bitcoin, and they're like, okay, cool, we'll get it to you. And then a week later, I had another message from these guys. And at this point, what I was doing is interesting. Like, I didn't have like a ton of extra investable capital at the time. A lot of my money was invested in assets, as it should be. And so to fund sending these guys a grand and a half, $2,000, what I was doing is I was taking my positions in Verge and my positions in Stellar Lumens, and I was selling. So like the first time to pay them, what I did was I mentally said in my mind, okay, here's the deal. Here's my timeline, okay? Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pay these guys some money. They're gonna send me these graphics cards, and this should take me about, 40 days or so. And because it's gonna take me 40 days or so, I should be able to flip them on the market. I should be able to flip them as soon as they get here, because like I said, the market, especially on eBay, was really hot. And so, they were just selling so much of them. So I decided I was gonna take sort of my crypto portfolio is right here, right? And I sold, give or take a third of my positions in Verge and Stellar Lumens. I sold about a third to kind of finance this initial run right here, to finance this first purchase order, and to finance sending these guys the money to get these cards. And my idea was, I'm gonna sell it in 40 days, I'm gonna get all the money back, and then I'm just gonna reinvest the money back into the portfolio. I'm gonna reinvest the money back into the assets. I'm gonna reinvest into Verge and Stellar Lumens. And that was my plan, that was my idea, that was my mentality. And that was exactly what I thought was gonna happen. But then you get this, these guys are like, oh, you gotta pay us more money, it's stuck in Mexican customs. And I'm like, crap, dude, I don't have that money, where am I gonna get it? So I sell, basically, I had to make a decision here, because to send these guys the money that they needed, the quote unquote needed, to get it from Mexico to America, and then I'm like, if I pay you guys this money, is it gonna get to my house? And they're like, yeah, you pay us the money, it'll go from Mexico right over to your house. Which was stupid, it was crazy. I obviously should have seen that this was a scam, especially because they were like literally shipping it out of like the middle of nowhere in England, and it was like, it was a pretty telltale sign of a scam. It was a pretty dumb thing for me to do on my part. It was pretty obvious that like these guys, they sent me their like shipping tracking number, and it was basically like they sent me to this website, and it was like this fake shipping company. And looking back at it, so like at the time I didn't know that this was fake, but they sent me to like this fake shipping company with like this fake tracking number, and they built like this whole website for this fake shipping company. And they're like, we are a shipping company, and at the time I was like, oh, okay, guess looks good. I don't know, I never heard of him before, because obviously it was a fake name for a fake shipping company. But I was like convinced in my mind to believe in it, convinced in my mind that like this was legit. And so I see that, and I'm like, okay, well, I gotta make a decision here. All right, should I keep my investments in Verge and Stellar Lumens in my portfolio, or should I, give everything to these guys and give them a bunch of money and hope that the stuff gets here, and then I can sell it, and then I can, reinvest that money? And I made a decision, I made a choice to sell the other 2/3, sell everything I had, basically sell my entire positions in here. And the reason I had to sell everything is just because over the course of a week or so, the value of Verge and Stellar Lumens had temporarily declined, just a little bit, maybe about 20% or so. And so because the value was just a little bit less, I had to actually sell everything, even though I should have had more money. The value temporarily declined. This is why you need to be able to obviously hold your assets in the long term and not have capital illiquidity problems where maybe you have to sell earlier than you actually want to because of little tough situations. I made the decision. I said, look, all right, I'm gonna send this money to these guys, so it comes, and I can sell everything. And I sell everything I have in this portfolio, at least in Verge Stellar Lumens, to pay them. And I pay them, and then a week later, this guy, it just falls apart. And basically they say, look, you need to send us more money. It's stuck in Texas now, and they won't let it pass borders or customs. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? This is bogus. What's going on? I didn't have any cash on him. And I mean, basically it was a scam, and none of the shipping stuff was real. I had spent a lot of time looking at it, and I was like, this has got to be a great investment. But it wasn't, and it was pretty obvious, looking back, it's very obvious this was a huge scam. And I never got anything else from these guys, never got any more messages from them. And once I stopped sending them money, they stopped talking to me. And I basically lost, the value of these investments within about 3 or 4 weeks after this was $100,000. And I lost all of that. I lost all of that because I got scammed, right? But why did I get scammed? Why did I fall for this crap? Why did I think this was gonna be real? And obviously, you're looking back and it was stupid. I was filled with emotion, I was filled with logic, I was filled with greed. I didn't understand where I was. But I think the biggest thing is that mentally, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to have 6 figures. I wasn't ready to have all that money. And I had associated it with these negative emotions of pain. And because of that, I felt that I didn't deserve. And I mentally found a way to get rid of that money, whether it was intentional or not, or subconscious or not. I found a way to lose all that money. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad experience. I learned a lot through this experience. If you guys ever have a chance to lose 100 grand, you will learn a lot losing 100 grand. Definitely a ton of stuff about sticking to your core and sticking to what you know and what you're passionate about and what you're really, really good at, instead of trying to go out in all these directions, try to stretch yourself out into industries that you're not familiar with. It's really, one of the biggest things I learned from this was I really need to stick with my core rather than try to do everything. You've got to specialize. You have to stick with your stuff. Because if all I did was stick with investing, which was my core, my passion, and my expertise, I would have had 6 figures easily. And that would have turned into more and more and more through the power of compounding and investing in more and more assets. But it didn't, because I went out of sort of my specialty. And so obviously there's some really great lessons learned here, but I think the reason it happened was because I wasn't personally ready to have that money, and more importantly, because I had this mental association that money was angry, and the root of money was anger and arguments and destruction from sort of what I grew up with. And that led me to go and basically throw it away. And I was pretty, I cried a lot after this happened, because it was really, really, really crushing to see this wealth just disappear. But I think, in the long term, it's what I needed. And I needed to understand that, you can lose it if you make bad investments. And most importantly is this concept that if you don't have money rooted correctly in your mind, is a positive root, is a positive base, and if you don't throw away those negative connections that you subconsciously have, you will not succeed. And it was a tough freaking lesson to learn. You go through this process. I was probably so young at the time, but it was just really, really harsh to see that happen. And hopefully you don't make that same mistake. Hopefully you can learn from this experience. You can learn from what I just shared with you, and not be stupid, not be silly, and just throw away cash and just crap. Because you need to focus on associating money with the right emotions. And that's kind of where Eckhart comes in, right? He says that, if you link the mind to negativity, if you link your mind to money being a bad thing, that you're gonna throw away that money, like we talked about earlier. But sort of the big thing here is, he says that the reason or the motivation you have for making money or creating success is vital. The reason or the motivation is extraordinarily important. And what you need to focus on is getting rid of sort of the roots, like the negative roots of bad emotions, instead of money, which is like the fruit, right? Because the real issue is usually something that's deeper. For me and for Ecker, the issue is anger between yourself and parents. The issue is anger that you see in the household. The issue is what you're surrounded with. And what you want to do is you want to resolve the actual difficulty, the actual challenge, instead of, like, it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. Like, if you can't get rid of the core, if you can't solve the core, like, you're not gonna have that success. In one way or another, you're gonna find a way to just get it out, just throw it away. And the really important thing here is that if your motivation for acquiring money or success comes from a non-supportive route, for me, like with crypto, this was like proving my parents, proving to everyone I know, improving. Like, you can make tons of money, you can invest extraordinarily well, and you can absolutely crush it, and you can do insane things with financial markets. But that route, if it comes from something non-supportive, such as fear or anger or need to prove yourself, your money will never bring you happiness. And more often than not, it'll just get thrown away, because you can't solve any of these emotional internal issues with money. Take fear, for instance. Ecker talks about during seminars, it's like, how many of you would cite fear as your primary motivator for success? And not many people put their hand up. And then he says, how many people would cite security as one of your main motivators for success? And almost everybody puts their hands up. But here's the thing, like, security and fear are both motivated by the same thing. Seeking security comes from insecurity, which is based in fear. So, will more money dissolve the fear? You wish, but the answer is no, because money is not the root of the problem. Fear is. Money, it will not happen. Even worse is that if the fear is not a problem, it's a habit. If you make more money, it will only change the kind of fear that you have, as if you were broke. And when we're broke, a lot of people think they're only afraid they'll make it and then they'll have enough. But once you make it, the fear changes to, what if we lose what I have, or everyone's gonna want what I have, or I'm gonna get, crushed in taxes. And in short, until you get to the root of the issue and dissolve the fear, no amount of money will help. And so it's really, really critical that you make the choice, make the decision to not worry, make the choice to get rid of these negative emotions, and that you decide that it's more important to live in an enlightened way, more important to live with purpose and with understanding and with care for what you're doing. Because if you don't crush sort of these non-supportive emotions and replace them with really, really positive, solid foundational frameworks, you can lose tons of stuff solely because of the mental state that you're in. Like this example with this, I call him China guy. With this China guy who took all my money, like, he's gonna be there scamming people for years and years and years and years and years, whatever, right? And the reason that, like, I fell for this crap was not because of him, right? He's doing the same thing every day, no matter what. It's because of me, right? It is my fault. And the big shift and the big takeaway from this, obviously, first of all, is stick with what you're really phenomenal at. Stick with what works. Stick with your core. Stick with your foundation. Stick with your skills. And focus on building those up more and more and more and more. And for me, like, that's investing. And it expands and expands over time, but you want to stick with what you know, which you can freaking crush it with until you get the actual results, and then you can, learn new stuff. But the other thing is to really be happy with that and stick with it, and make sure that you're not trying to just have tons of money based on some deep underlying emotional subset, because at the end of the day, like, that is not going to lead to a positive growth. It's not going to lead to abundance. It's not going to lead to wealth. Instead, it'll lead to this pit, lead to this hole, and that hole, it's kind of like creating a sinkhole. So, like, if you think about, your mind as like a road, right? And, you're driving along this road on your mental car. And at the end of this road is like a ton of money, and this is like where you want to go to, and this is going to make you super, it's going to be the best thing ever. But underneath everything, you have like this buildup of sort of like negativity, these bad emotions, right? If these negative emotions manifest themselves more and more and more and more, and they come up to the surface, so they're right below the surface, all you need is a little tiny crack in this road, and all of a sudden, everything caves in, and you have a giant sinkhole, and you fall into this huge sinkhole, and you crash and burn. So it's really important that instead of that, you see this starting out, and you see this crack, and you see this underlying tension, and you make the conscious decision to deal with it and to get rid of it, and instead replace it, not with negativity, but instead with positive emotion. Instead replace it with a solid foundation, a solid framework, and a solid base that you can then drive on and go through and, you know, do whatever you need to do. Invest in the assets you need to invest in, go through the process you need to do to follow to have really, really quality investments and assets. And you'll have this solid foundation that's gonna support that growth, support that money, support that income, support that wealth over time, sustainably in the long term. It all comes from having this base in your mind. And even if you, like, if you think about it like a road, right? Like, you don't see the dirt under a road. You don't see what's inside like, if you look at a picture of me and you're like, wow, that guy's like stocks and stuff. Like, and I'm like a suit or whatever. Like, you're not gonna see what's inside my mind. All you're gonna see is that outside image. Same thing with you. Like, people don't see inside your mind. All they see is the outside image. Same thing with a road. You don't see what's under a road. All you see is the outside paved surface. If you don't have the right stuff under the road, under the hood, in your mind to say, then this road, this outside image will crackle and crack. So it's really important that you focus and focus and focus on building this and building up the foundation. Like, if you think about how they build a highway, they have to settle the dirt first before they lay the pavement. That's exactly what you need to do here, is take a minute and understand sort of where those negative deep-rooted emotions can come from and how they could be linked subconsciously, and then abolish them. And I'll tell you guys what, it's way easier, and I don't care how dumb it looks, like, it's a bajillion times easier to go, and throw away those negative emotions and go, you know, this is not true, this is not true, not true, not true, not true, I have a millionaire mind. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to go and you know, lose 100 grand to some scam crap and never see that money again, because you don't take the 10 seconds it takes to do that. So the reward is just so much greater. And it's really, really powerful. So with that said, hope you get a ton of value out of this module. Go out there, apply it, absolutely crush it, and I will see you in the next module. Thanks, bye.